Being an institution that your community looks to for guidance during times of trouble, it's a big responsibility. We had over 50 virtual programs this year. We saw over 200,000 viewers on our online programs, and we've just continued that engagement. The programs and outreach team has been continuing to conduct trainings. When there's a really racist or Islamophobic 9/11 presentation, we train school districts in Florida to teach them cultural competency, teach them about the rights of Muslims and the rights of all Floridians and how to respect and make it an inclusive space for everybody. We've continued to do these trainings throughout the entire year, and making them virtual hasn't stopped, our trainings and our Islam 101s and our Know Your Rights from happening. We did a hospice training where we trained over 40 hospice end-of-life care professionals. They would have Muslim patients and they don't have any family members, and so they weren't sure who they should contact for end-of-life rights and burial rights. And so Care Florida was able to act as a network to them, connecting them to different masajid across the state that are going to help support those, really vulnerable Muslim brothers and sisters. We actually conducted a training for the American Red Cross here in Orlando. So their statewide operations, they had about 40 folks on the call, and their regional leaders actually told us that they would change the way that they respond to disaster relief. We had folks tell us, they wish that they had this care training 10 years ago. They go a long way. The education piece is so critical.
For far too long, the government narrative that stigmatized members of the Muslim community, that targeted us, was accepted as justifiable. And Care Florida has been pushing to change that narrative. One of the ways we did this is through Care Florida's groundbreaking Exposed series.
We highlighted, the history of United States violation of civil rights, going back from the civil rights era all the way to its modern day political prisoners.
We had Muazzam Beg, who was a former Guantanamo prisoner, who was the victim of torture.
The case of Imam Jamil Al-Amin, who is still wrongfully imprisoned for a murder which someone else has confessed to, and that confession was never allowed in court. And he was one of the civil rights era giants, and we're not doing anything about it. And Care Florida is here to shine a light on that. We covered the case of Dr. Sami Al-Aryan.
We were watching this live stream and we saw members of the Department of Justice, members of the media, local elected officials, they were all tuning in, and after the program they all reached out and they thanked us for giving Dr. Al-Aryan a voice to share his traumatic experience of persecution.
You had the last case being that of the Holy Land Foundation 5, the historically largest at its time Muslim charitable organization in the United States. The government targeted these individuals without any basis, without any evidence, because they were doing humanitarian aid. People didn't like what they were standing up for, that they were Palestinian activists and humanitarians, and they were basically able to put them in jail without a single shred of evidence. That's a travesty. That's a travesty to our Constitution. That's a travesty towards every person's right in America. The first step, again, in fighting to protect these civil rights is just educating people about what's happening. We had so many people tell us about the Exposed series that they never knew. And to be honest, I never knew a lot of the details of those cases either. We want to use that education to protect our community and advocate for systemic change.
And I'll never forget meeting with several assistant U.S. attorneys and prosecutors who admitted to us, pointing out to the Dr. Aryan case in particular, but other cases as well, that one of their greatest regrets was that they wrongfully prosecuted Muslims. So it was very important to bring to light these stories, these issues, so that we can prevent them from happening again.
Given the political climate that we're in the US, we saw, this resurgence in the importance of the Black Lives Matter movement and people protesting in the streets. One of the things we wanted to do was to connect the dots for people that this is not something new. These struggles are directly tied to the struggles of the civil rights era, which are directly tied to the discrimination that the Muslim American community feels. We can't be separated as communities. We really have to understand that our struggles are one and the same, and that they're interconnected because the same systems of oppression that are targeting one community are targeting the other community.